Hello, welcome to La Excellence. In our Ecology and Environment series, we have discussed 9 topics, and this is our 10th topic. The last topic was important environmental organizations. In today's session, we are going to understand the important sustainable agricultural practices and how they can be useful and why sustainable agriculture is needed now. Before going to this topic, I would request all of you to go through the previous questions. Whenever you read any subject, not just this one, any subject, any topic, you have to go through your previous questions. If you go through your environment related previous questions, you will find at least one question from sustainable agricultural practices every year. Right? That's why we have chosen this particular topic. Now, let's explore. First of all, let us understand what is the meaning of sustainable agriculture. It is a farming technique which protects the environment, public health, and animal welfare. That means it is sustainable for all environment, humans, and then to the animals. To obtain food, fiber, plant, animal products, we go for farming. So these farming techniques should be sustainable. They should keep in mind all these dimensions. And sustainable farming supports the profitable production. It protects the environment. It uses natural resources. It provides us with the affordable and high quality goods, products, agricultural products, and others. And it provides us quality of life to the rural communities and farmers. And it lasts for many generations. That's why the name sustainable. The other benefits include it contributes to the environmental conservation, it saves the energy for the future, it protects the public health, it prevents the pollution, it prevents air pollution, prevents soil pollution, it reduces the cost of agricultural production, it protects the agro biodiversity, it increases or promotes the sustainable livelihood management, it is beneficial to the animals, beneficial to the farmers, it promotes social equality, it promotes the beneficial effects over the environment. That means sustainable agriculture is good. Then what are the various types of sustainable agricultural practices? Let us understand each one of them. So we have 20 important sustainable agricultural practices. Today we are going to discuss each one of them in detail. Crop rotation, permaculture, cover crops, soil enrichment technologies or techniques, natural pest predators, integrated pest management, polyculture farming, agroforestry, biodynamic farming, very important, better water management, mixed cropping, intercropping, these are common. Mixed cropping, intercropping, contour farming and terrace farming, organic farming, dryland farming, zero budget natural farming, which can be considered part of organic farming. One straw approach again can be seen as part of organic farming. Hydroponics, one of the evolving agricultural practices. Vertical farming, especially in urban areas, this is one of the famous methods of farming. Smart farming, one of the evolving trends in the agriculture. So let's understand each one of them in detail. First one is crop rotation. This is not a new thing. This is there. It's based on our traditional knowledge. Crop rotation means, let's say, in a particular season, let's say we have grown wheat. Next season, what should we grow? That following season, what should we grow? Crop rotation means going for different crops over various seasons. But many of the times we are going for monoculture. Monoculture means same crop in various seasons. Subsequent seasons also we are going for the same crop. That is called monoculture. In its place, if we can go for crop rotation, it will enhance the environmental benefits. It enhances the incomes of the farmers also. That means it is the method of going for different crops in a regular succession in the same field. That means in one season, different crops, another season, different crops, another season, different crops. That's how we should go for rotating the crops over a particular period of time. This crop rotation can enhances the soil fertility. It will reduce the risk of crop failures. It controls the weeds and pests. It prevents the soil erosion. Different types of plants, they have different characteristics. So they'll have hedge over various types of risks. So first sustainable agricultural practice is crop rotation. This can be asked as a prelims question. Which of the following are the benefits of crop rotation? In such questions, if we can understand this concept, we can write these benefits or we can identify the benefits very easily. So first one is over. Second type of sustainable agricultural practice is permaculture. Perma, the name itself says permanent culture, agriculture. Permaculture means it's a food production system. It is designed in a different way as compared to the normal systems. How we will understand. It is designed with the intention to reduce the waste of resources and create the enhanced production with the available resources. Let's see how this can be done. Permaculture is one of the emerging areas. Let's see this. There is a technique called Hugelculture. Hugelculture means whatever material that we have, all the wood, etc., we pile it up at one place. Slowly we try to grow the crops and all on this pile. What happens when we pour water, etc.? It stores for a longer period of time, and its roots can go deeper and deeper. So over a period of time, this wood, it turns into manure. That way, this entire area provides for more nutrition, more water storage. That will be more efficient. And whatever we keep inside this is all waste material only. For example, if you see the transition, Hugelculture, garden bed, after 1 month, after few months, after few years, after this. That means roots can be much deeper, which will which will enhance the nutritional capacity and capacity of the crop or the tree that grows over here. That's called permaculture. It is designed in different ways. It is designed based on the landscape model. Next technique is cover crops. Cover crops simply means, in general, what we do, let's say this is the agricultural field. Let's say we have grown some crops over here in this row, in this row, in this row. Then this entire region or this entire area is barren. Then due to water erosion or wind erosion, due to water and wind, the soil gets eroded. That leads to less fertility. In such conditions, what we can do is, we can either grow legumes in this barren land or grasses or brassicas. So if we grow them here, if we cover up the land, it protects the soil. That method is called as cover crops. Cover crops is a sustainable agricultural technique wherein we don't leave any barren land. We cover it with these things, legumes or grasses, etc. This way we prevent the soil erosion, we suppress the growth of weeds, we enhance the quality of soil. As it reduces the soil erosion, it saves the money. It saves the money that we use for chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Mulching is a technique which can be used in addition to the cover crops. That means, let's say in a barren field, we can place the dry leaves and others. That way the ground will be covered. It leads to more percolation of water. It leads to less evaporation. For example, you compare these two. It leads to less evaporation of water. It acts as compost. So it increases the soil fertility. So mulching can be a very important technique which can be used in addition to cover crops. Next important sustainable agricultural practice is soil enrichment. This we do all the time in our farms. We enrich the soil artificially. But here, as we are saying sustainable, we are going to enrich the soil through the natural means by placing the manure or by mulching or by multiple ways. Let's say by leaving the crop residue in the field itself or by placing the compost of the plant or animal material. That way we can enrich the soil. So enrichment of soil through the natural way is important and which can be considered as one of the sustainable agricultural practices. Next one is natural pest culture. Natural pest culture means, in general, we try to use pesticides to kill the harmful pests. But There are many pests which are important for the soil fertility and for the growth of the crop. In such cases, we should enhance and encourage the natural pest culture. For that, we have to see the entire farm as an ecosystem rather than a factory. Let's say birds and other animals, these act as natural predators. That's why these are important. So instead of going for chemical pesticides, if we can go for biopesticides, we call them as biopesticides. If we use biopesticides through natural pest culture, they won't harm the environment. At the same time, they will kill the harmful pests. That way, it is win-win situation. It protects the environment. It is beneficial to the farmer. It is less cost. It is less costly. That means it will save the money also for the farmers. Next one is Bio-Intensive Integrated Pest Management, IPM. This is a famous method. This is similar to our natural pest culture. Here it is used on an intensive scale. That's why we have written it as a separate method. Integrated pest management is an approach. It relies on biological as opposed to the chemical methods of pesticides. Biological method. In this case, we have to plan, we have to communicate, we have to manage, and we have to integrate the knowledge. That means it is so economically viable, environmentally safe, socially acceptable. So we are going to develop the biological pest agents, let's say ladybirds, etc. Here we can also use GM, genetically modified pests, genetically modified organisms which can act as a pesticide. Let's say BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, BT cotton. So it's part of integrated pest management. Genetically modified technologies can be used for pest management. Next one is polyculture farming. Polyculture farming is similar to crop rotation, but this one mimics the natural principles that yields the best results. That means we grow multiple crops in one area at a time. That means we go for multi-cropping with crop rotation. We integrate both crop rotation with multi-cropping. That leads to greater diversity of products at one place. Plus, it takes care of the biodiversity needs. And it applies the natural mechanisms for maintaining the soil fertility. So if you ask me what is the difference between crop rotation and this, crop rotation is a practice wherein you can use chemical fertilizers, pesticides, any. We just change the crop, that's it. Change the crop every season. But polyculture farming focuses on natural mechanisms of enhancing the soil fertility. Polyculture farming, it faster sowing, better yields, but then slower harvest, more investment is needed to take care of and to provide R&D, to provide extension services. Right? But polyculture farming is one of the emerging areas of sustainable agriculture. Next one is agroforestry. Agroforestry is a traditional method wherein, if you look at this diagram, we have trees at the edges of the field. In between, we have multiple crops. So if we grow the trees at the edges, one, it can save the field from the erosion, soil erosion, from wind, water, etc. That's why agroforestry as a method is introduced in many places. It is a type of social forestry where individual farmers, they undertake the tree farming in their field. It encourages the overall production of the field. It combines the agricultural crops with tree crops. It applies the management practices that are compatible to the local population. So agroforestry it's a proven method. That's why governments try to encourage this method in almost all the areas. Next method is biodynamic farming, very important. This particular farming is based on the philosophy of German philosopher Rudolf Steiner. Rudolf Steiner, he has proposed for anthroposophy. So according to this philosophy, nature and spiritualism both are not different. Through spiritual means, by combining spiritual practices and agricultural practices, we can go for holistic ecological agriculture, which is called as biodynamic farming. That's why biodynamic farming, it incorporates ecological and holistic growing practices based on the philosophy of anthroposophy, Rudolf Steiner, German philosopher. What it does is, what are the crops that we should grow? So that should have a spiritual basis to it, plus composting. Other things are normal: composting, manure using, animal crop rotation, going for complementary crops, which encourages and enhances the food production, soil fertility. These are all common, but only point that is different is biodynamic farming. We tend to change based on the natural elements that we feel spiritually. That's why this particular type of farming lacks scientific evidence. That's why many tend to not to believe it as a scientific agricultural practice. But this is also one of the natural farming practices, sustainable agricultural practices. Next one is better water management practices. Agriculture, as we know, is the largest consumer of water, fresh water. So better management practices, water management practices is obvious solution for sustainable agriculture. There are many methods. Micro irrigation is one of the methods of important methods of sustainable water management. Right? We have to first select the right crops. Let's say we have water intensive crops, less water intensive crops. In this region, which crops are suitable? Let's say Vidarbha region of India. They are growing sugarcane, but that region is dry region. Sugarcane is water intensive crop. So fundamentally, if we look at the sustainable agricultural practices, can we go for sugarcane farming in that area? No, because the region lacks sufficient amount of water. That way we should see which crop can be grown at what place based on the water availability. So we should go for well-planned irrigation systems. We should shift to micro irrigation systems wherein the efficiency of water use enhances or increases. We should also go for rainwater harvesting structures. Drip irrigation is one of the micro irrigation practices. It's modern method of irrigation which promotes the sustainable agriculture. Drippers, sprinklers, foggers, there are many types of equipments which we can use. The advantages includes it saves the water and provides for higher yields. It provides for high quality and increased fruit size because of the specific targeting of the roots of the tree, and it is suitable for all types of soil. It is easy for fertigation, very important term. Fertigation means applying the fertilizer through water, through irrigation. Fertigation means fertilizer plus irrigation at a time, and it saves the labor and time for providing the water. But then initial cost is high. Clogging of emitters, that means those pipes, clogging of these pipes, that can be done, damage to the components. So these are all, we can't say disadvantages, we can say constraints. We can overcome these things because we can say one third of water that we use for agriculture, we can save them if we can shift to micro irrigation practices such as drip irrigation. Next important agricultural method is mixed cropping. Mixed cropping means we grow two crops at a time. In crop rotation, we grow a crop in a season, next season another crop, next season another crop, and then we come back. In this, mixed cropping means we grow multiple crops at a time. Mixed cropping. There is a term called mixed agriculture also. Mixed agriculture means we go for agriculture plus we go for animal farming. That's called mixed agriculture. Here, mixed crop mixed, that means two crops at a time. So one can, it reduces the risk in case of crop failure of one, and it enhances the nutritional security, especially if we go for leguminous crops, etc. It enhances the soil fertility. What are the advantages of mixed cropping? Fertilizer and water requirement of crops, as they are different. They use different kinds of inputs. So let's say a crop here, a crop over here. This might need more fertilizer, this might need less fertilizer. Then if we apply over here, this can absorb the little percentage of it, which would be sufficient. That way we can save the fertilizer. Pests can be controlled, higher yields per acre compared to the monoculture. These are all the advantages of mixed cropping. Remember, mixed agriculture is different from mixed cropping. Next one is intercropping. Intercropping is same as mixed cropping. Simultaneously, we grow multiple crops at a time. So we can say intercropping as is similar to mixed cropping, but while selecting the crops, we go for complementarities. Okay, this particular crop suits best with what? So that complementarities we see. So we can say intercropping and mixed cropping both are similar. But the difference is in mixed cropping, we can go for multiple things. Let's say a rice field is there, we can go for aquaculture in the water. Aquaculture. So that's how mixed farming and mixed cropping is little different from intercropping. Next one is contour farming and terrace farming. Both we follow in general in the hilly areas. Contour farming means, let's say this is the hilly region. So whatever the slope might be, on line with the slope of this mountain, we just place some barricades kind of things. Just we build the bunds, that's it. That's called contour farming. Terrace farming means, let's say if the mountain or hill is like that, we are going to make place. We are like this. We are going to build the terraces by cutting the mountain. A part of it, we are going to build the terraces. But in this contour farming, we are going to grow the crops on that slope only, not on a flat platforms like these terraces. That's the difference. In the hilly areas, these two types of farming, they represent this sustainable agriculture because they reduce the soil erosion, they reduce the wind erosion. So that's why these two methods are said as sustainable agricultural practices. Next one is organic farming, very famous. Organic, the name itself shows it's a farming technique which cultivates the trees and plants and raise the animals in a natural way. Whatever is naturally available, let's say vermicompost, green leaf manure, crop rotation methods, biological pest management, animal husbandry, biofertilizers, manures, these are all used. Already we have learnt about crop rotation, biopesticides. So we integrate all these technologies, we call them as organic farming practices. It enhances the soil fertility, it reduces the cost of purchasing pesticides and fertilizers, it minimizes the pollution and it reduces the wastage. Here we should remember this point. In organic farming, we can use GM, genetically modified seeds. We can go for a little amount of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Majority of it is fertilizers and pesticides are organic. We can use on a smaller scale. But technology, GM seeds, these are used as usual. Organic farming. If possible, try to read about it in detail. What is organic farming? What are the advantages, disadvantages, measures taken by the government of India, recent concerns, etc. we have to cover. Next issue is dry land farming or dry land agriculture. Dry land agriculture refers to agriculture in rain-fed conditions. In general, we can group the agricultural lands into three: dry farming areas, dry land farming areas, rain-fed areas. That means cultivation of crops where rainfall less than 750 mm per annum is dry farming. Above 750 dry land farming. Rain-fed means more than 1150 mm. So when we say dry land farming at this particular thing, we select the crops which suits to that particular climate and the water stress. So dry land farming is socially and economically advantageous if we can select the better crop and better irrigation practices. So because in dry land agriculture, rainfall is uncertain, soil, especially because of the dry nature of the soil, it lacks moisture and it leads to more erosion of the soil due to wind and other factors. So dry land farming with relevant techniques and crops is important. That would be sustainable for the environment. Next one is zero budget natural farming. Zero budget natural farming can be said as part of organic farming. Let's say if we can say this is organic farming, we can say this as One of the methods of organic farming, zero budget natural farming, it means it requires some amount, but most of it can be procured from the local resources only. Loss would be neutral. In case of any loss in commercial agriculture, loss would be more. In this case, loss would be neutral. That's why it is called zero budget. That doesn't mean it doesn't require any money. It requires money. Loss would be neutralized in case. Right. It has 4 pillars. One is Bijamruta, that is seed treatment. Before using the seeds, we have to treat them in neem leaves, etc. Jivamruta, no chemical fertilizers. We use only the manure, mulching of the straw and etc. Vapasa means maintaining the soil moisture. These are 4 pillars of zero budget natural farming. Here we can see Subhash Palekar. He is one of the pioneers of this particular zero budget natural farming. Though he belongs to Maharashtra, this method became very famous in Karnataka. After that, many states have adopted this particular method of agriculture, zero budget natural farming. The next method of sustainable agriculture is one straw approach or zero tillage approach. Zero tillage approach. This method is developed by no tilling or zero tilling farming is developed by Fukuoka, a Japanese farmer. In this, soil is left undisturbed. We don't till at all. We just disperse the seeds. In the forest, etc., we are not tilling, yes or no? But then trees are there. Fertility is more as compared to the normal soil. So in this case, it is said that we are not going to till. Plus, whatever straw that is generated in the field, that is going to be placed in that form itself. That acts as a bed or cover crop kind of thing. That's the approach of one straw method. One straw method tries to reduce the soil erosion, minimize the harm to soil by not tilling it. Next method is hydroponics farming. Hydro, the name itself says hydro, water. Hydroponic farming means we grow the crops, especially horticultural crops, etc., in the water by adding some nutrients, mineral nutrients. Let's say a drip system. There are many types of hydroponic farming. One is aeroponics, 2 drip system, 3 deep water culture, 4 nutrient film technique. These 4 methods of hydroponics are chosen based on the requirement of the crop. Some crops require this type, some other require this type, like that. And there are advantages with it. See, here we don't require any land. We can just take a place, set up the infrastructure, set up the required amount of light, provide the water and minimum requirement of nutrient medium. That's it. With that only we can grow the plants, and we, especially in the urban areas, hydroponics is one of the emerging areas. In land stress areas, this is one of the very, very important sustainable management practices. Next method is smart farming. Smart farming, though it's not a separate method, we wrote it under sustainable agriculture because it includes various technologies which will encourage the sustainability of the field, agricultural field. We use drone technology, we use sensors, we use IoT, we use data systems, we use all kinds of technologies, modern biotechnology, to enhance the agricultural production, plus to encourage the biodiversity in that region. IoT, data management, etc., these are taken, which takes the better decisions with minimal cost to the environment. Smart farming means use of modern technology in enhancing and encouraging the agri production. Finally, vertical farming. Vertical farming and hydroponics can be integrated. Vertical farming, if you see, hydroponics is part of it. Aeroponics, aquaponics, there are multiple methods. Hydroponics is part of this. Vertical farming means, see, the layers of pipes and bases are set up. Fruits and different kinds of vegetables, leafy plants, these can be grown in this particular method. So vertical farming is again an important sustainable agricultural practice. It leads to zero wastage. Zero wastage because this nutrient absorbed by this particular plant and then water is again recycled, used it for providing the water supply again in the particular lab. You can say it as lab or farm, whatever. See, it consumes 70% less than the conventional forms. 75% less than the conventional forms. Aeroponics, hydroponics 70%, this is 95. Aquaponics, zero wastage at all. We integrate with the fish ponds, etc. So wastage would be nil. Finally, after understanding all these agricultural practices, we have to understand this term, climate resilient agriculture. Sustainable agriculture is needed to address the climate change. Climate change, for that we have to adapt to the climate change. We have to mitigate the climate change. We have to go for food production in a sustainable way. That's the need now. So, many of the climate resilient agricultural practices which reduces the use of natural resources, which enhances the productivity, we call that as climate resilient agriculture. Climate resilient agriculture also includes the social dimension, farmer incomes, climate vulnerabilities, farm incomes need to be enhanced, climate vulnerabilities needs to be reduced. That kind of agricultural practice is called as climate resilient agriculture. This is important especially because of the climate change and other emerging challenges. That's about the sustainable agricultural practices. If you have any queries and questions, you can ask us. PDF of this session is available in the video description. You can go through it. All the very best. Thank you very much.